In the mid-1980s, right in the heart of North London, fear and terror spread across the city as several women and children were reported to have been raped and killed in neighborhoods, especially at railway stations. Initially, people suspected that the attacks were done by just one serial killer, but it didn't take time before they were convinced that two or more serial killers were involved in these heinous acts. It all began in 1982 when a woman was raped by two men near Hampstead Heath railway station. After that, 18 more women were attacked over the next year, mostly late at night in dark, quiet places near railway stations in and around North London, especially Hampstead, Barnes, and other places. More attacks happened in 1984, and in 1985, 3 women were raped on the same night in Hendon. However, the question on the minds of everyone at the time was who could be behind these terrible acts. What drove the unprovoked attacks, and why target train stations specifically? Hello and welcome to Maya's Reality Channel, where we bring you compelling true crime stories. From unsolved mysteries to notorious criminals, we leave no stone unturned as we navigate the dark corridors of real-life crimes. Please don't forget to give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more. Now let's get back to the story. After numerous reports of rape and murder, the Metropolitan Police in West London launched an urgent investigation called Operation Heart to apprehend those responsible. The victims described the attackers as a short, ginger-haired man and a larger man. Since DNA technology wasn't available at the time, suspects could only be excluded based on blood grouping. One of the attackers, suspected to be the ginger-haired man, was an A secretor with a specific PGM factor in his blood. Unlike DNA, many individuals share the same blood grouping, so while this evidence could rule out suspects, it couldn't pinpoint the offenders. On December 29, 1985, during the holiday season, a local girl named Allison Day set out on a journey to meet her boyfriend in Hackney by train. Allison was a young lady who lived with her parents and had plans for a pleasant evening out with her boyfriend. Despite the usual hustle and bustle of the area, the holiday season had left the streets relatively deserted, creating an isolated atmosphere. Allison was expected to arrive at the nearby Hackney train station, but never showed up. When Allison didn't arrive at the expected time, her boyfriend grew concerned and enlisted the help of his mother to search for her. Despite their efforts to locate Allison, they couldn't find any trace of her. Concerned for her safety, the boyfriend reported Allison Day missing to the police, initiating a search and investigation into her whereabouts. After 17 days of intensive searching, Allison's body was discovered inside a canal. As the officers retrieved her corpse from the canal, a sense of dread filled the air. Her coat had been weighted down with 2 concrete blocks, indicating a deliberate act of murder. The cause of death became apparent as soon as her body was brought to the surface. A ligature was found around her neck, with a piece of wood still attached to it. Allison had been strangled with a piece of her own blouse material, twisted tightly around her neck with a wooden stick. The sheer terror of having her own clothing turned into a deadly weapon must have been unimaginable. The method resembled a traditional ligature known as a Spanish windlass, a vicious tool rarely seen in murder cases. Further gruesome details emerged as investigators delved deeper. A makeshift gag made from pieces of Allison's blouse had been placed in her mouth, while the same material was used to bind her hands. The absence of witnesses made piecing together the events challenging. However, the proximity to Hackney Wick Station provided clues about the likely sequence of events. It was later theorized that Allison was abducted near the station, taken across the railway tracks, and brought down to the towpath where she was subjected to unspeakable horrors, including rape and torture. Despite the investigators' efforts, the lack of forensic evidence, compounded by the limitations of technology in the 1980s, hindered progress in the case. A special rape squad, comprising 30 officers, including 18 women, was formed to address the alarming rise in reported attacks. Victims, traumatized and fearful, often hesitated before coming forward to share their harrowing experiences, causing drawbacks for the investigators. With time, The police further stepped up their search for the attacker, who had been nicknamed by the press as the Railway Rapist. However, the murder of Allison Day prompted them to change this name to the Railway Killer, a tag reinforced by the rape and murder of 15-year-old Dutch schoolgirl March Tambozer. March was killed in West Horsley in Surrey on the afternoon of 17 April 1986. She was knocked down from her bicycle with a wire that had been tied between two trees. March was then raped before being strangled using the same technique that had killed Allison Day. The cruel killers then tried to destroy evidence of their evil crime by burning March's body. However, in their attempt to destroy evidence, the murderers carelessly left vital clues in the form of string and discarded matches. The string used by the killers, which was of a rare kind known as sumyarn, was used to block the footpath and tie their young victim. This material later became key evidence in solving the mystery of the Railway Killers, as it was produced by a small vendor and rarely seen in the country, providing a valuable lead. Later, Detective Superintendent Charles Farquhar, a seasoned investigator of East London murders, took over Allison Day's murder inquiry. He connected her murder to the earlier railway rapes and then linked it to the murder of a girl Tambozer. Farquhar made this connection when he noticed that a belt and twig in a crime scene photo were part of a tourniquet ligature. As the police worked tirelessly to catch the perpetrators, detectives investigating the series of rape cases in North London became interested in a man named John Duffy, a resident of Kilburn. Born on November 29, 1958, Duffy grew up in the London district of Kilburn, raised in a modest family environment. However, his time at Haverstock Secondary School was marked by challenges, particularly as an introverted loner in a large school environment. Standing out with his peculiar habit of wearing multiple coats even in warm weather, Duffy was viewed as eccentric by his peers. Unfortunately, his distinctiveness made him a target for bullying and harassment. However, by chance, a reclusive teenage John Duffy met his equally twisted soulmate, David Mulcahy, at Haverstock Secondary School. Mulcahy was just a year older than Duffy, and their bond became an inseparable friendship that would later fuel dark sexual fantasies. As a teenager, Duffy was described as having a smaller stature while Mulcahy was bigger and more muscular. This made Mulcahy take on the role of looking out for Duffy as his protector. He made it clear that anyone who bothered Duffy would have to deal with him. This created a strong bond between them, and they both became a menace in their neighborhood. As their friendship grew stronger, they discovered they shared many interests, including a rather unconventional approach to playground games. They played a game similar to Kiss Chase, but with a twist. The game took a disturbing turn as it progressed to chasing girls, capturing them, and making inappropriate physical contact with them. As Duffy and Mulcahy became more acquainted and comfortable with each other, they began to explore their sexual fantasies together. If their desires aligned, they would then collaborate on actions, devising plans and suggesting new ideas to try out. Inspired by Bruce Lee's films, Duffy and Mulcahy became deeply interested in martial arts. Their fascination with combat didn't stop at reality, but extended into the realm of fantasy. They often engaged in role-playing, dressing up as soldiers, and acting out various scenarios. One night, feeling adventurous, they roamed around Hampstead Heath, startling couples, including some from the gay community who often visited the area. Their adventures mirrored the daring actions of characters like Tom Fury, adding an exciting dimension to their teenage years. After leaving school, the inseparable duo seemed to leave their disturbing antics behind and moved on with their lives. They both got married within a year of each other, with Mulcahy marrying in 1977 and Duffy in 1978. They both settled into steady work, with Mulcahy training as a plasterer and Duffy becoming a carpenter. Duffy worked for various employers, including British Rail, as he established himself in his profession. Now, despite their troubled past, they appeared to be leading ordinary lives, blending into society and keeping their darker inclinations hidden. It was through this company that Duffy was able to arm himself with knowledge of the rail network to carry out violent assaults on women either around or near deserted railway stations. Mulcahy's life was characterized by a series of different jobs, showcasing his versatility. He excelled in decorating, displaying a skill that set him apart in his profession. However, despite his apparent success, he and Duffy continued to engage in petty crimes, such as breaking into cars, to supplement their income. Despite their criminal activities, Mulcahy managed to maintain a facade of normalcy and respectability in the eyes of his neighbors, who viewed him as a dedicated family man. His ability to compartmentalize his life, balancing his criminal behavior with his family responsibilities, added complexity to his character. On the other hand, things got worse for Duffy when his marriage started falling apart. He got really obsessed with martial arts and started being violent. He couldn't handle his marriage breaking down, so he started hurting his wife. However, she reported him to the police, stating that he was being really aggressive and that he even raped her several times at knife point. While Duffy wasn't initially considered a prime suspect in the investigation, he did appear on the long list of individuals the police wished to speak with. His presence in the police database was due to an accusation made by his wife in 1985, alleging rape. This event likely raised suspicions and led to his inclusion in the list of persons of interest. Despite not being immediately identified as a suspect, this connection would later prove crucial in the unraveling of the case. When Duffy arrived at the police station, detectives couldn't help but notice how closely he matched the descriptions provided by some of the rape victims. With his small stature, piercing blue eyes, ginger hair, and pockmarked face, Duffy's appearance raised suspicions. During the interview, Duffy caught sight of paperwork containing photo fits of the railway rapists, catapulting him into the top 10 suspects. Later that night, Duffy surprised the police by showing up at West Hampstead Station sporting facial injuries and a knife wound to his chest. He claimed to have been attacked. Duffy was later released as he claimed he couldn't remember anything about his movements due to having been mugged and beaten. However, Duffy didn't know then that he had been put under police surveillance. It was later revealed that Duffy had pressurized a friend to beat him up to further solidify his cunning tactic to prevent further questioning or an appearance in court. Consequently, Duffy was admitted to a psychiatric hospital for treatment. Just a month later, another troubling incident unfolded in Hertfordshire. Anne Locke, a secretary, vanished mysteriously while traveling home from work on a train passing through Brookmans Park Station. Anne usually cycled from the station to her home, so when her bike was discovered padlocked at the cycle shed, concerns heightened. Her newlywed husband pleaded for information about her whereabouts, fearing the worst. In response, the police launched an extensive search of the surrounding fields, forests, and open areas. Police Constable Keith Dean was part of the search team tasked with exploring a tunnel near the station. Despite the challenging conditions, including cold water and rats, they meticulously combed through the tunnel, feeling along the murky depths. However, their efforts yielded no trace of Anne or any clues to her disappearance. Duffy was later arrested on the 26th of November, 1986, while stalking a woman in a quiet park with the intention to rape. At this time, the police now had just 36 hours in which to collect hard evidence to present to a magistrate in order to detain Duffy. While searching Duffy's family house, the police found a crucial clue: a large ball of unique yarn used to tie up his victims, linking him to the murders of Allison Day and Marty Tamboza. His experience with traditional bow saws linked him to the unusual method of strangulation using a self-fashioned tourniquet, and his knowledge of the Southeastern Railway system was part of his former job. Duffy was questioned about the crimes, and the next day he was charged on all counts. Police knew that he had not committed the offenses alone, but Duffy was not forthcoming about his accomplice as there was still concern about Duffy's possible involvement in the North London raids, involving two perpetrators. Days later, David Mulcahy was also questioned, primarily due to his close friendship with Duffy. However, despite suspicions, the victims were unable to identify Mulcahy in an identity parade positively. This failure to identify him was largely due to the requirements of the identity parade of the time, which necessitated the victim to physically touch the offender and get close to him. As a result, Mulcahy was later released due to a lack of concrete evidence linking him to the crimes. Duffy went on trial in February 1988 and was convicted of multiple charges, including 5 rapes and the murders of Allison Day and Marty Tamboza. He was sentenced to 30 years imprisonment. While Duffy was incarcerated, Mulcahy appeared to have moved on with his life, participating in family activities and developing new interests. However, the police continued to investigate Duffy's potential involvement in the unsolved murder of Anne Locke. Over a decade later, Duffy confessed to Mulcahy's involvement in their crimes, supported by new DNA evidence linking Mulcahy to the attacks. This revelation likely came as a shock to those who knew Mulcahy as a seemingly upstanding member of the community, highlighting the hidden depths of his dark past. According to Duffy, their criminal activities typically began with a call from Mulcahy, during which Duffy would inquire if Mulcahy fancied going out hunting, a phrase indicating their intention to seek out a victim. They would then set the mood by playing Michael Jackson's Thriller tape before committing their crimes. Duffy depicted Mulcahy as the dominant figure in their partnership, suggesting that Mulcahy was the controlling factor and the stronger character between them. Their actions seemed to provide them with a sense of excitement and empowerment, likening the feeling to that of the fictional character He-Man. They derived pleasure from the idea of hunting down women, viewing it as a thrilling activity rather than mere stalking. To them, it was simply a matter of finding someone in the wrong place at the wrong time, adding to the sense of adventure and danger that fueled their crimes. As police continued gathering evidence, Mulcahy was placed under surveillance in northwest London. Former Detective Sergeant Kevin Shanahan recalls observing Mulcahy's routine, emphasizing his active involvement in the community and his seemingly normal family life. Despite Mulcahy's dark past, he appeared to pose no immediate threat to women. The ease with which Mulcahy integrated into society after his crimes surprised many, highlighting the ability of some offenders to hide their true nature. Duffy's confession during surveillance led to Mulcahy's implication in multiple rapes and murders, revealing him as a sinister and depraved killer. Former Detective Mick Freeman recounts Duffy's chilling account of Mulcahy's escalating violence, leading to the murders of several women. As the evidence mounted, Mulcahy appeared in court, facing charges of rape and murder. His demeanor drastically changed from the outgoing individual he once was to a solemn figure protesting his innocence. Duffy's betrayal after years of silence provided crucial evidence against Mulcahy, leading to his conviction. During the trial, prosecution evidence painted Mulcahy as the primary perpetrator, being the first to decide that sexual stimulation was no longer sufficient, leading to the decision to murder their victims. Described as smug and arrogant, while in the witness box, Mulcahy vehemently denied all allegations. He claimed that Duffy was lying, suggested that the DNA evidence had been planted by the police, and refuted the fingerprint match on the tape used during a rape. The defense also sought to exclude Mulcahy's interview tapes from the 1980s as evidence. Ultimately, Mulcahy was convicted of 3 counts of murder and 7 counts of rape. He received 3 life sentences with a 30-year recommendation, along with 24 years imprisonment for each full rape offense. This conviction came in February 2001, 13 years after John Duffy's conviction, bringing a measure of closure to the victims and their families. The brutality of Mulcahy's crimes and his dominant role in his partnership with Duffy underscored the depth of his depravity. The revelation of Mulcahy's true nature shattered any semblance of the friend that those who knew him once knew, leaving behind only a haunting persona. Following Mulcahy's conviction, the police reopened investigations into hundreds of unsolved rapes and murders across the country, suspecting that the 2 men may have committed more offenses than those Duffy confessed to. Detective Superintendent Andy Murphy expressed suspicion that Mulcahy had committed other acts of violence against women both on his own and with Duffy, encouraging any surviving victims to come forward. Despite these inquiries, neither man was ever charged with any further crimes, leaving a haunting uncertainty surrounding the full extent of their atrocities. All right, guys, that wraps up our video for today. If you found this interesting and informative, please give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button to support this channel.